On the far side of the galaxy, the planet Zyphera glowed with soft blue light, its cities floating high above crystal oceans. It was a world of wonder and technology far beyond anything humans had ever imagined. Yet beneath the sparkling towers and smooth airways, a quiet fear spread among the leaders. Their species, once thriving for thousands of years, was slowly dying. Birth rates had fallen, and the future of Zyphera looked dim. In the palace of the ruling family, Princess Lysera walked through a corridor of shimmering panels. She had always been different from the others, intelligent, curious, and thoughtful. But she carried a secret that made her a target of whispers. Lysera was sterile. Despite her royal status, she could not produce heirs, and in Zyphera's culture, that was considered a tragedy. Her advisors often spoke of her in hushed tones. Perhaps she can find another way to serve, one would say, while others shook their heads. But Lysera had learned to ignore them. She spent her time studying science, philosophy, and the arts, curious about the universe beyond Zyphera. One day, the Council of Zyphera gathered in the Grand Chamber, a vast space where glowing orbs floated in the air, displaying star maps and data streams. The leaders were unusually lively, whispering and laughing behind closed eyes. Lysera entered, sensing something strange in the air. "Lysera," the High Counselor said, his tone polite but sharp, "we have an assignment for you." Lysera raised an eyebrow. Assignments were usually serious, involving science, diplomacy, or security. But she noticed the faint smirk on the counselor's face. "You are to travel to the human planet," he continued. "Observe their society, learn their ways, and report back." Lysera blinked. Humans? The planet Earth was little more than a legend among Zyphera's scholars. Their technology was primitive, and their culture was chaotic by Zyphera standards. "And what is my role in this mission?" she asked carefully, sensing a hidden meaning. "You are to study them. But more importantly," the counselor's eyes twinkled with mischief. "Batterkrazen. We have the monxes. Batterkrazen. We thought it amusing to send our sterile princess to a species famous for reproduction. Perhaps it will inspire some humor." Lysera's heart sank. She realized immediately. They were joking at her expense. A prank, thinly veiled as a mission. The council laughed quietly among themselves, as if her reaction was the most entertaining part. For a moment, Lysera felt anger rise, but she took a deep breath and forced a smile. She had faced ridicule before. She would not let it stop her. "Very well," she said, her voice calm. "I will go to the humans and study them, and I will return with my report." The council nodded, still snickering. They had no idea that their joke would soon backfire. Within days, Lysera boarded a sleek spacecraft designed for long interstellar travel. The vessel was unlike any human ship, shining with silver panels that absorbed energy from stars. As the engines hummed, Lysera looked out at Zyphera's glowing cities shrinking into the distance. She felt a strange mixture of sadness and excitement. Her mission was clear: observe humans, return with knowledge, and prove that even a sterile princess could serve her people. But deep inside, a small spark of curiosity burned. She wondered, what were humans really like? Could they teach her something? Could they survive challenges that Zyphera could not? Lysera's journey took months through dark starfields and swirling nebulae. During this time, she studied human broadcasts, intercepted transmissions, and read every fragment of human literature that Zyphera had archived. She learned about their cities, their conflicts, their art, and their endless creativity. To Lysera's surprise, humans were messy, unpredictable, and often illogical, but also inventive, resourceful, and surprisingly compassionate. When Lysera finally approached Earth, the planet glowed with blues and greens, oceans shimmering beneath clouds. She marveled at its beauty. Unlike Zyphera, Earth was vibrant, but imperfect. Fires burned in forests, storms raged over cities, and yet life thrived everywhere. It was messy, chaotic, and alive. Landing in a quiet forest at night, Lysera emerged from her craft. She moved carefully, blending in with the shadows. Her appearance was humanoid enough to avoid immediate attention, though her glowing eyes and faint aura marked her as unusual. Soon, humans discovered her. A group of scientists on an observation mission found her in the woods. Startled, but not afraid. Humans were naturally curious, and their questions were direct. Sometimes blunt, sometimes kind. "I am Lysera," she said in their language, which she had learned quickly from their broadcasts. "I have come to learn from you." The humans exchanged glances, whispering among themselves. They had expected something extraordinary, but not someone so calm, so poised, and so intelligent. They offered her food, shelter, and conversation. Over the following weeks, Lysera studied humans closely. She observed how they solved problems, how they worked in teams, and how they cared for each other, despite limitations in resources and technology. She noted the strength in their weaknesses, the creativity in their improvisation, and the determination in their failure. The humans, in turn, were fascinated by her. She did not lecture or command. She asked questions, listened, and offered insight. She helped them improve small things: energy efficiency, agricultural methods, and even minor medical techniques. In her own quiet way, Lysera was making a difference. Yet Zyphera's council had no idea. They expected a report full of jokes and observations of human inferiority. Instead, Lysera was quietly learning, quietly experimenting, and quietly planning something they could never predict. One night, she stood under the stars, thinking about the council's words. They had called her sterile, useless, and amusing. But here, among humans, she felt a new possibility. Sterility did not mean emptiness. Intelligence, creativity, and courage were forms of fertility, fertile ideas, fertile collaborations, fertile change. Lysera smiled softly. She did not yet know what she would create with these ideas, or how it would change Zyphera. But one thing was certain: when she returned, she would not be the princess they had mocked. She would return with something they could never joke about. And perhaps, she thought, humans themselves were the secret Zyphera needed to survive. Days turned into weeks, and Princess Lysera's life on Earth began to settle into a rhythm. She lived among humans, learning from them quietly and observing everything with the keen eyes of a scholar. Though Zyphera had sent her as a joke, she treated the mission seriously, finding fascination in every small detail of human life. The humans she stayed with were a small team of scientists and explorers who had long suspected the existence of intelligent life beyond Earth. They were curious, thoughtful, and always eager to learn. Unlike the leaders on Zyphera, they did not mock her. They treated her as an equal, asking questions, sharing ideas, and teaching her about their world. Lysera, in turn, shared subtle insights about physics, biology, and energy, careful not to reveal the full extent of Zyphera's technology. What fascinated her most was the humans' creativity. In their laboratories, she watched them build simple machines from scraps of metal and wires. They did not have Zyphera's perfect technology, but they made do with what they had. A broken generator became a source of power for a small village. A failed experiment turned into a new discovery. Lysera realized that humans thrived not because they had perfect tools, but because they never gave up, even when everything seemed impossible. One evening, she walked through a human city, marveling at the lights and movement. The streets were noisy, chaotic, and filled with life. People shouted to each other, argued over small matters, and laughed at jokes that sometimes made no sense. Yet, beneath the chaos, Lysera saw something extraordinary. There was kindness. Strangers helped each other. Communities came together in times of need. She realized that humans had a kind of strength. Sci-Fi had lost a strength that came from persistence, empathy, and hope. Lysera began to conduct small experiments of her own. She collected samples of soil, water, and plants, comparing them to Sci-Fi's advanced data. She tested human biological patterns, noting their diversity and adaptability. Humans could survive in harsh environments, heal faster than expected, and even thrive under pressure. Their limitations did not stop them. They adapted, learned, and improved. At night, she spoke with her human hosts about their dreams, fears, and ambitions. One scientist, a kind woman named Mara, told Lysera about a village struggling to survive after a flood. Lysera listened carefully and suggested small changes in water management and crop rotation. The humans implemented her ideas, and within weeks, the village began to recover. It was a small victory, but to Lysera, it was proof of the potential hidden within humans. Back on Sci-Fi, the council continued to laugh at her mission. They had no idea she was doing more than observing. To them, she was a failure, a princess, sent on a fool's errand. But Lysera secretly felt a growing excitement. She was learning something that no Sci-Fi had thought possible. The human's adaptability, creativity, and courage could inspire change not just on Earth, but across her own dying planet. One day, Lysera discovered something remarkable. While studying human biology, she noticed a unique pattern in their genetic diversity. Humans, despite their flaws and fragility, had an incredible capacity for growth and adaptation. Their genes were flexible, allowing them to survive harsh conditions and even recover from diseases that would have devastated Sci-Fi. Lysera's mind raced with possibilities. If she could combine human adaptability with Sci-Fi's advanced technology, perhaps she could create something new, something that could help her people survive. The thought excited her, but she kept it secret. This was not a mission for Sci-Fi's council. It was a mission for the future. Meanwhile, the humans began to trust her more. They asked for her advice on difficult problems, and she provided guidance without commanding them. She taught them ways to improve energy efficiency, develop sustainable farming, and even make small medical breakthroughs. The humans were amazed. They had expected an alien visitor to be distant or superior. But Lysera was humble, patient, and kind. She treated them as partners, not subjects. Lysera also learned about human emotions, joy, sadness, fear, and hope. She had studied feelings on Sci-Fi, but here she saw them in action. Humans could fail, but they could also forgive. They could fight, but they could also protect each other. She realized that their emotional resilience was just as important as their physical adaptability. Humans survived not because they were perfect, but because they never gave up on themselves or each other. Her observations began to shape her experiments. Using subtle techniques, she combined Sci-Fi biology with insights gained from humans. She was careful, experimenting quietly in the labs provided by her hosts. She tested ideas about growth, adaptation, and resilience. Each small success filled her with hope. She could see the beginning of something extraordinary, something that could change the fate of her own world. But Lysera also faced challenges. Some humans were suspicious of her. They asked why she had come, what her true intentions were, and whether she could be trusted. Lysera answered honestly, emphasizing her curiosity and desire to learn. Over time, even the skeptics began to respect her. They saw that she did not seek power or control. She sought understanding. As the weeks passed, Lysera began to see patterns in human society. She noticed how communities worked together during crises. how individuals sacrificed for the greater good, and how ideas spread quickly when people believed in them. Sci-Fi had lost this sense of collective strength. On her planet, intelligence and technology were valued, but collaboration and empathy were often ignored. Humans, in their imperfect way, had something Sci-Fi desperately needed. One night, Lysera stood on a hill overlooking a human city, watching the lights twinkle like stars on the ground. She reflected on what she had learned. Sci-Fi had sent her as a joke, expecting nothing of value. But here, she had discovered something priceless. Humans were more than their flaws. They were resilient, inventive, and full of potential. A thought took root in her mind. Perhaps the Council's joke was not a failure after all. Perhaps it had given her the opportunity to learn something Sci-Fi had forgotten. She could combine human strengths with Sci-Fi technology. And maybe, just maybe, she could create a future her people had thought impossible. Lysera smiled softly to herself. The humans had no idea how extraordinary they truly were. But for now, she would continue learning, observing, and experimenting. Every day brought new discoveries, and every discovery brought hope. For the first time in her life, Lysera felt that her sterility did not define her. Intelligence, courage, and creativity were forms of fertility too. She was planting seeds of change, not in soil, but in ideas, collaboration, and understanding. And these seeds, she believed, could one day bloom into something that could save not just her planet, but perhaps others as well. As weeks turned into months, Lysera grew more confident in her understanding of humans. She had learned to navigate their cities, interact with their communities, and observe their strengths without judgment. But what fascinated her most was the human ability to adapt and create under pressure. They faced scarcity, danger, and failure every day, and yet, they did not give up. Each problem was met with determination, each failure with curiosity, and each small success with celebration. Lysera began to see the patterns that Sci-Fi had long ignored. Humans' limitations were not weaknesses, they were opportunities. Imperfections forced them to innovate, to collaborate, and to grow stronger. Where Sci-Fi had relied on flawless technology and rigid order, humans thrived through flexibility and resilience. One quiet night, Lysera returned to the lab her human hosts had built for her. The small room was filled with equipment cobbled together from Earth and Sci-Fi technology, glowing softly in the dim light. She carefully arranged her notes and samples, preparing for a series of experiments she had been contemplating for weeks. Her goal was simple but daring. Combine human adaptability with Sci-Fi biology to create something entirely new. She did not fully understand the outcome, but she was guided by curiosity, observation, and hope. If successful, it could be a symbol of possibility, a bridge between two worlds, and perhaps a solution to Sci-Fi's decline. Lysera began with simple genetic tests, mixing human DNA samples with Sci-Fi cellular structures in controlled environments. She observed how cells interacted, noting unexpected strengths and weaknesses. Humans' genetic diversity made them highly adaptable. Sci-Fi biology gave resilience and precision. The results were promising, but unstable. She spent long hours refining her methods, making small adjustments, and observing every reaction. Humans in the nearby town were unaware of the exact nature of her work, but they respected her dedication. They noticed her meticulous care, her endless patience, and her refusal to cut corners. Even without fully understanding her experiments, they trusted her instincts. One day, while observing a human village recovering from a minor storm, Lysera had an idea. Humans survived disasters, not only because of their physical skills, but because of their social bonds. Cooperation, empathy, and shared knowledge were just as important as technology or strength. Sci-Fi science had ignored these qualities for centuries, relying solely on intelligence and control. Lysera began to integrate this lesson into her work. She created a simulated environment where human behavioral patterns influenced biological growth. She tested how cooperation, problem-solving, and emotional resilience could impact cellular adaptation. Slowly, the hybrid models she was creating began to stabilize, showing signs of intelligence, adaptability, and survival instincts. As the experiments progressed, Lysera realized that she was not just creating a hybrid life form, she was learning a new form of life entirely. It was a life shaped by ideas, collaboration, and creativity as much as by biology. For the first time, she felt that Zyphera's greatest limitation, rigid perfection, could be overcome through the qualities humans embodied so naturally. However, Lysera knew she had to be cautious. Zyphera's council would never approve of her experiments. To them, she was still the Barren princess, a joke sent to Earth. They would not understand the potential she was unlocking. If they discovered her work prematurely, it could be shut down, and years of careful experimentation would be wasted. At night, she confided in Mara, her closest human companion. Mara had grown to respect Lysera's wisdom and kindness, and she listened with fascination as Lysera explained the principles behind her research without revealing the full extent. "What you're doing," Mara said one evening, "is more than science. It's hope." Lysera smiled. "Yes, but hope must be tested, refined, and nurtured. It is fragile, and it must grow in the right environment." Despite the secrecy, Lysera felt a growing sense of purpose. Each success in her lab reinforced her belief that humans were extraordinary. Their imperfections were the source of strength, their adaptability the key to survival, and their creativity the spark that could save even a dying civilization. One breakthrough came unexpectedly. A sample she had been experimenting on for weeks began to show signs of autonomous response. It adapted to changes in temperature, light, and chemical composition faster than any Zypheran organism she had studied. It demonstrated problem-solving behaviors, finding resources, adjusting its structure, and even communicating through subtle signals. Lysera's heart raced. She had created something entirely new. It was intelligent, adaptable, and resilient, a living proof that cooperation between species could produce results neither could achieve alone. For the first time, she realized the true potential of her mission. Zyphera had sent her as a joke, expecting nothing. Yet, she was on the brink of creating a solution for her people's decline. If Zyphera's council could see this, if they could understand it, they might finally recognize the value humans could bring not just as allies, but as a model for survival. But Lysera also knew the danger. Such discoveries could be misunderstood or feared. Zyphera had long viewed imperfection as weakness, and humans as chaotic and unpredictable. Presenting her work too soon could provoke fear, resistance, or even sabotage. She would need patience, strategy, and discretion to ensure her experiments could reach their full potential. Meanwhile, her interactions with humans continued to shape her perspective. She observed how they solved conflicts, how they adapted to natural disasters, and how they celebrated small victories. She began to see that human strength was not in isolation, but in community. Each human life was fragile alone, but together, they were formidable. Lysera decided to apply this principle to her experiments. She created hybrid environments where collaboration and interaction shaped development. The results were astonishing. The new life forms grew faster, adapted more quickly, and displayed traits that seemed almost human. They were intelligent, curious, and empathetic, living proof that Zyphera's reliance on rigid perfection could be complemented by the unpredictable strengths of humanity. As the weeks passed, Lysera's secret breakthrough became more than just an experiment, it became a mission of hope. She was no longer the barren princess sent as a joke. She was a creator, a bridge between worlds, and a symbol of what could be achieved when intelligence and empathy worked together. One night, standing beneath the Earth's stars, Lysera reflected on her journey. Zephyra had underestimated humans, dismissing their value and mocking her presence. Yet here, on a distant planet, she had discovered the greatest secret of all. Human resilience, creativity, and collaboration could create life in ways Zephyra had never imagined. A new determination filled her. She would return to Zephyra not with a report, but with proof. Proof that humans were extraordinary. Proof that her people could survive. And proof that even a princess dismissed as barren could change the fate of her civilization. Lysera smiled softly. The council had sent her as a joke, but soon they would realize that the joke was on them. Humans and the life she was creating would show them that hope, creativity, and collaboration were more powerful than perfection or fear. The princess, once considered powerless, now held the key to a new beginning. And when she returned, Zephyra would never be the same again. The journey back to Zephyra was unlike any other Lysera had taken. Her spacecraft glided silently through the starry void, carrying with it not just a princess, but a symbol of hope. Hidden within the carefully shielded compartments was the creation she had nurtured on Earth, a hybrid life form, born of both human adaptability and Zephyran biology. It was fragile, intelligent, and alive with potential. Lysera watched the stars pass by, her mind replaying everything she had learned on Earth. Humans were far from perfect, yet their imperfections had become a source of extraordinary strength. Their resilience, creativity, and empathy had allowed her creation to thrive. She knew that Zephyra's leaders would never understand these qualities unless they saw them firsthand, and she was determined to make them see. When she arrived in orbit above Zephyra, the planet glimmered with its familiar blue light. The floating cities sparkled, a beautiful but brittle civilization. From orbit, she could see the bustling towers, the flowing rivers of energy, and the countless citizens moving about their orderly lives. Yet beneath the perfection, she could sense the fragility, the quiet fear of a species facing decline. The council had convened in the Grand Chamber as her ship approached. They were eager to witness what they believed would be another fruitless mission. High Counselor Valon leaned back in his chair, smirking. "The Barren Princess returns," he whispered to a fellow counselor. "Let us see what pathetic report she brings this time." Lysera landed in the palace courtyard. Citizens and guards alike watched her with curiosity and suspicion. She carried herself with quiet confidence, her presence commanding attention without arrogance. For the first time, the council's laughter felt hollow, as if the joke they had planned had already begun to unravel. Inside the Grand Chamber, Lysera removed the protective casing that shielded her creation. A soft glow filled the room as the hybrid emerged small, intelligent, and full of life. It moved with grace, its eyes reflecting both human curiosity and Zephyran precision. This is impossible," Valon muttered, stepping closer. "What have you done?" Lysera spoke calmly, her voice steady. "I have combined the strengths of two species, human adaptability and Zephyran biology, to create life capable of thriving where either species alone could not. It is proof that our civilization can survive if we embrace new ideas and cooperation." The council was silent, struggling to comprehend what they were seeing. Their princess, once dismissed as sterile and useless, had achieved what no scientist or leader could imagine. The hybrid life form moved gracefully around the chamber, responding to its environment, adapting to stimuli, and demonstrating intelligence far beyond expectations. "This creature," another counselor began, his voice trembling. It thinks. It responds. It is alive." "Yes," Lysera said. "And it is only the beginning. Humans, despite their simplicity, have strengths we have ignored for centuries. Their resilience, creativity, and empathy are qualities Zephyra needs to survive." By learning from them, we can prevent our decline and build a future worth living. Valen's eyes narrowed. Pride, fear, and disbelief battled within him. He had mocked her, dismissed her, and even sent her as a joke. Yet here was undeniable proof that she had succeeded. He felt a pang of something unfamiliar, respect, perhaps, or maybe shame for underestimating her. Lysera continued. Our species is in danger. We have relied on perfection and rigid order for too long. We have ignored creativity, adaptability, and compassion. The humans taught me that these qualities are not weaknesses, they are strengths. If we embrace them, in quote, and in one, Scifi can survive and even thrive again. The hybrid life form approached the council, demonstrating simple problem-solving behaviors. It moved objects to create stability, communicated through subtle signals, and responded to both Lysera and the council's commands. It was alive, intelligent, and fully capable of learning. A murmur spread through the chamber. Counselors whispered to each other, some in awe, others in fear. This was unlike anything they had ever seen. The princess they had ridiculed had returned not with a report, but with a living proof that challenged their understanding of life, intelligence, and the future of Scifi. High Counselor Valen took a deep breath. You have done the impossible, he said slowly. You have created life where none should exist. And you claim humans are responsible for this? Lysera nodded. Not humans alone, and not Scifi alone. Cooperation, respect, and understanding between our species made this possible. It is a symbol of what we can achieve if we are willing to change. One counselor, still skeptical, asked sharply, and what if this creature fails? What if it brings danger instead of hope? Lysera's gaze was steady. It will adapt, just as humans and Scifians have adapted for millennia. It will survive because it embodies the best of both worlds. But the greater lesson is not just the life form, it is the realization that survival depends on humility, collaboration, and courage. Scifi's future depends on embracing these qualities, not fearing them. For a moment, the chamber was silent. Then, slowly, the counselors began to see the truth in her words. They had mocked her sterility, laughed at her mission, and dismissed humans as inferior. Yet here was undeniable proof that humans' strengths, resilience, creativity, and collaboration were extraordinary. And their princess, once considered useless, had unlocked a new path for the survival of their entire species. Valen stepped forward, his expression unreadable. Perhaps we have underestimated humans. And perhaps we have underestimated you, Lysera. Lysera's heart lifted. She had expected resistance, fear, and doubt. But she also knew that change was possible. The council was beginning to understand that the joke had backfired, and in the most remarkable way. The hybrid life form moved closer to the council, responding to subtle gestures from Lysera. It was intelligent, curious, and resilient, living proof that cooperation and understanding could create solutions no single species could achieve alone. Lysera spoke softly, but with conviction. Scifi has the knowledge, the technology, and the history to survive. But alone, we cannot overcome our weaknesses. Humans have shown me that hope, courage, and creativity are just as important as intelligence. Our future depends on learning from them, respecting them, and working together. The council fell silent again, staring at the hybrid. For the first time in centuries, they were confronted with a possibility they had never imagined. The sterile princess they had mocked had returned not with failure, but with life and with hope for an entire civilization. Lysera's mission, meant as a joke, had become a turning point. Scifi could no longer ignore humans or their qualities. The future of their species was uncertain, but for the first time, it was filled with potential. And at the center of it all stood a princess who had once been dismissed as powerless, now the herald of a new era. After Lysera's dramatic return, Scifi was alive with tension and curiosity. Citizens whispered in the streets, astonished at the news that the sterile princess had not only returned, but had created life. The council chambers, once places of rigid order and debate, now buzzed with hope and uncertainty. For centuries, Scifi had been proud, confident, and rigid, but now, the planet faced a possibility they had never dared to imagine. Lysera stood in the council chamber, her hybrid creation beside her, observing the councilors. Every motion, every subtle signal, displayed intelligence and awareness. The life form was proof of what she had learned on Earth, and now it stood as a symbol of hope for Scifi. High Counselor Velan, still recovering from his initial shock, spoke first. Lysera, your return has changed everything. We mocked your mission, yet you have shown us something beyond our understanding. We see now that humans, though imperfect, have strengths we have long ignored. And you have turned their qualities into life. Lysera bowed her head slightly, not in humility, but in acknowledgement. Thank you, High Counselor. But this is not about me alone. This is about cooperation, learning, and embracing new ideas. Scifi cannot survive on perfection alone. We must value creativity, empathy, and resilience, just as humans do. Other counselors began to speak, some still hesitant, others filled with awe. They asked questions about the hybrid, about its abilities, and about how humans had inspired it. Lysera answered carefully, emphasizing that this was not a weapon, but a symbol, a proof that collaboration between species could achieve what Scifi alone could not. Over the following weeks, Lysera worked tirelessly with the council to share her knowledge. She described how humans solved problems, adapted to disasters, and found strength in each other. Scifi scientists were skeptical at first, but as they observed the hybrid, they began to understand the lessons it carried. It could adapt, communicate, and even demonstrate problem-solving in ways Scifi had thought impossible. The hybrid became a living teacher. It showed that intelligence alone was not enough. Flexibility, cooperation, and creativity were equally important. Counselors and scientists began to experiment with new approaches to governance, technology, and social organization. They realized that rigidity and perfection, once seen as strengths, could no longer guarantee survival. Lysera also began to bridge Scifi with Earth. Using her connections with humans, she facilitated exchanges of knowledge, ideas, and culture. Humans, fascinated by Scifi's advanced technology, eagerly collaborated with the alien scientists. In turn, Scifi learned that humility, patience, and respect were just as important as intelligence and skill. The transformation was not immediate. Some Scifians resisted, fearing change and questioning the value of humans. Lysera patiently guided them, using the hybrid as a living example of potential. Slowly, minds opened, and hearts followed. Even High Counselor Velan admitted, "I never imagined humans could teach us so much, and I never imagined our princess could lead us to such a future." The hybrid itself thrived under this new environment. It grew stronger, learned quickly, and began to interact with both humans and Scifians. Citizens marveled at its abilities, often gathering to watch it solve complex problems, navigate challenges, and even demonstrate empathy. It became a symbol of hope, inspiration, and the future. Lysera, once dismissed as barren and powerless, became a hero. Her intelligence, creativity, and courage had not only saved her people from despair, but had also shown that Scifi could change, adapt, and survive. Her journey to Earth, meant as a joke, had become a turning point in the history of her planet. The humans who had helped her watched from afar, proud yet humble. They had never sought recognition, but they understood the significance of what had been achieved. Through cooperation, trust, and shared knowledge. Two species, one fading, one chaotic but resilient, had created something extraordinary. Sci-Fi's society began to change. Governance became more flexible, science more creative, and communities more cooperative. People who once feared imperfection now celebrated it as a source of innovation. The lessons Lysera had learned on Earth were gradually integrated into every aspect of life. One evening, Lysera stood on a balcony overlooking the city, the hybrid lifeform moving beside her. The lights of Sci-Fi shimmered in the distance, reflecting both the beauty of their technology and the new hope that filled the air. She thought of Earth, of the humans who had inspired her, and of the future that now lay ahead. "The Council will take time to fully understand this," she said quietly. "And the people will too. But change has begun, and that is enough." The hybrid responded with a soft glow, almost as if it understood her words. Lysera smiled, realizing that life, no matter its origin, carried the same potential for growth, learning, and hope. In the months that followed, Sci-Fi began to thrive in ways it had not for centuries. Scientists collaborated freely with humans, creating new technologies that combined the best of both worlds. Communities became stronger, more compassionate, and more resilient. And through it all, Lysera remained a guide, a teacher, and a symbol of the extraordinary power of cooperation. The Council, once rigid and dismissive, acknowledged that their princess had saved Sci-Fi, not through royalty or power, but through vision, courage, and intelligence. They had learned that sometimes the greatest strength comes from unexpected places, and that true survival requires humility as much as skill. Lysera's journey had started as a joke, a cruel experiment to mock her sterility. But it had become a story of triumph. She had returned with life, hope, and a vision for a future where Sci-Fi could survive and flourish. And through her actions, she had shown that humans messy, imperfect, and unpredictable held lessons that even the most advanced civilization could not ignore. As the twin moons of Sci-Fi rose in the night sky, Lysera looked at the stars, thinking of Earth and the humans who had inspired her. She realized that survival was more than biology or technology. It was empathy, courage, and the willingness to learn from others. The future was bright, filled with endless possibilities, and she knew that both Sci-Fi and humanity had a role to play in shaping it. For the first time in centuries, Sci-Fi felt alive not just in its technology, but in its people, its communities, and its hope. And at the center of it all stood a princess once dismissed as barren, now a symbol of resilience, intelligence, and the extraordinary power of cooperation. Lysera smiled softly, knowing that her journey was only the beginning. The universe was vast, full of unknown worlds, challenges, and possibilities. But with courage, curiosity, and trust in others, even the smallest spark could ignite a future brighter than anyone could imagine. Sci-Fi had learned that true strength did not lie in perfection, but in understanding, cooperation, and hope. And Lysera, once a joke, had become the bridge between two worlds, the catalyst for a new era, and the proof that life, in any form, could achieve the impossible.